She shouldn't have survived that night. A young woman, wrists bruised, her white wedding dress torn and burning in the wreck of a luxury sedan, chained to the seat by the man who swore to love her. The world saw only smoke and ruin, but one man saw her light. A former Navy SEAL, battle-scarred and tired of miracles that never came, kicked through the flames and pulled her from the fire. That rescue should have been the end. Instead, it was the beginning of something no courtroom, no empire, no weapon could destroy. 14 months later, that same woman walked down an aisle built from ashes, holding a lantern instead of flowers, a symbol of every soul who's ever been trapped, every heart that still believes God sends help when the world looks away. This is more than a love story. It's proof that redemption wears scars, that faith sometimes arrives in the hands of a stranger, and that even the burned can become the builders. Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe God still works through ordinary people to deliver extraordinary miracles, hit subscribe and stay with us till the end of this story. The first thing Evan Brooks noticed wasn't the fire. It was the smell. That sharp, metallic tang of burning rubber, gasoline, and something darker, something human. Pittsburgh's autumn air, crisp and gold just an hour ago, now carried a heavy haze that clawed at the back of his throat. He eased his black Ford Raptor to the shoulder near Shenley Park, the truck's headlights slicing through drifting smoke that curled between the red-orange maples like restless ghosts. The city's skyline glowed faintly beyond the trees, muted by fog rising from the Monongahela River. Evan stepped out, boots crunching over damp leaves. He was 35, broad-shouldered, his posture unconsciously disciplined. A faint scar ran along his jaw, the souvenir of an IED blast outside Kandahar 6 years ago. His close-cropped brown hair had grown slightly uneven, and a week's worth of stubble shadowed his angular face. People often said he looked like a man halfway between soldier and ghost. He'd left the Navy SEALs after 12 years, trading combat zones for boardrooms in the family construction empire, Brooks Holdings, a pillar of Pittsburgh's steel-to-real estate dynasty. Yet for all his wealth and pedigree, Evan never really came home. Combat had stripped the luxury from his bones. He preferred worn boots to suits, bourbon to champagne, silence to small talk. Tonight had been one of those quiet drives he took when sleep refused him. Windows down, engine low, the city at his back. But now the smoke called him. Through the trees, orange light flickered like some terrible beacon. The fire was maybe 50 yards ahead, a car wrecked against an oak, the metal frame twisted and shrieking under the heat. Evan's instincts kicked in before thought. He jogged closer, shielding his mouth from the smoke. Flames danced along the sedan's crushed hood. The smell of leaking fuel mixed with scorched fabric. Inside, he saw movement. A woman. She sat trapped in the driver's seat, her head slumped against the window, the white of her dress stained gray with ash. For one surreal heartbeat, Evan thought he'd stumbled upon a corpse from a wedding long forgotten. But then her hand moved, weak, trembling. "Help," she whispered, voice barely cutting through the crackling fire. He yanked at the driver's door. It didn't budge. The frame was warped, welded shut by the impact. He circled to the passenger side, heat searing his face. His lungs ached, his eyes watered. When he peered through the shattered glass, the sight froze him. The woman's wrist bore a thick steel shackle, the kind used in industrial lockups. A chain, heavy and blackened, ran from the cuff to the seat frame bolted beneath her. "Jesus," Evan muttered. "Who the hell did this to you?" She lifted her head, her face streaked with soot, skin pale beneath it, eyes wide and glassy. She was young, late 20s maybe. Auburn hair, now tangled with debris. Her lips trembled, cracking at the corners. Even in the smoke she was striking, fragile in the way that made a man want to protect her. "They'll come back," she rasped, voice hoarse. "They said I'd never run again." Her words sent a chill down his spine colder than the October air. Whoever they were, they'd left her here to die. Evan scanned the wreck. The flames were climbing fast. The heat would hit the fuel tank in under a minute. He sprinted back to his truck, flung open the toolbox in the bed, and grabbed a tire iron. The metal burned cold in his hand, grounding him. It felt familiar, like the weapons he once wielded overseas. He ran back, crouched by the smoking car, and slammed the iron against the chain. Sparks exploded, lighting the dark like angry fireflies. Again, again. The chain barely dented. His arms screamed. "Stay with me!" he shouted, choking on the smoke. She coughed violently, her wedding veil fluttering like torn wings. "What's your name?" he asked, swinging again. Lily," she whispered. "Lily Arden." "All right, Lily. You're gonna breathe for me, yeah?" His voice was steady, the same tone he used when his team bled in sand and dust. "We're getting you out." He adjusted his stance, grit between his teeth, and slammed the iron one last time. The link snapped with a metallic shriek just as the windshield blew inward from the heat. "Move!" Evan hauled her out, her body limp but alive. He pulled her clear of the wreck, both collapsing onto the damp forest floor, just as the fuel tank ignited behind them. The explosion rolled through the trees like thunder, showering them with embers. Evan's body instinctively shielded hers, covering her head with his arm. The shockwave threw dirt and leaves over them, followed by silence, save for the crackling inferno devouring what was left of the car. For several seconds, Evan couldn't hear anything but the ringing in his ears. Then came the ragged sound of Lily's breathing, fast but steady. He lifted himself slightly, brushing burning leaves from her ruined dress. The once ivory silk was shredded, soaked with soot and blood. Her skin was marked by bruises, a thin welt wrapping around her ankle where the shackle had bitten deep. "You're safe," he said quietly. Her eyes fluttered open, disoriented. She clutched the remnants of her gown to her chest, shivering even as the fire's heat pulsed nearby. "No hospitals," she gasped suddenly, panic snapping her awake. "Please don't call anyone." Evan frowned. "You need a doctor. You've been chained in a burning car." "I said no hospitals." Her voice cracked but carried a conviction that startled him. "You don't understand what they'll do if they find me." Her desperation hit him harder than the explosion had. He saw the fear behind her eyes, raw, instinctive, the kind soldiers carry long after war. He recognized it because he'd seen it in the mirror once. Evan leaned back, trying to make sense of what kind of person refused rescue. Maybe she was running from someone dangerous. Maybe from herself. "All right," he said finally, his tone softening. "No hospitals. But you're not staying here either." Her gaze darted around the trees, haunted. "They'll come back for me." "Then we don't give them the chance." He guided her toward his truck, wrapping his jacket around her shoulders. The coat dwarfed her frame. When she tried to stand, her left leg buckled. He caught her before she fell. Easy, he murmured. She looked up at him then, eyes shimmering with both gratitude and fear. Why are you helping me? He hesitated. The real answer, that he didn't know, that something deep inside refused to walk away, seemed too fragile to speak aloud. Because you need it, he said simply. They reached the truck. Evan opened the passenger door, helping her climb in. The interior light revealed her face more clearly now, delicate features dusted with ash, freckles faint beneath the grime, and a small scar curving near her temple. She smelled faintly of smoke and wildflowers crushed by fire. He started the engine, the hum of the Raptor steady and reassuring. As he pulled away from the park, Lily sat rigid, hands clasped tight, her eyes flicking to every passing shadow. Evan's phone buzzed on the dashboard, a message from Logan Hines, his operations manager and oldest friend. Brooks Holdings just got a surprise visit at HQ. 2 men asking where you are. Said it's urgent. Evan's grip tightened on the wheel. He glanced at Lily, still trembling, gaze fixed out the window as the reflection of flames died behind them. Who are they? He asked quietly. Her silence was answer enough. The truck rolled down the empty streets of Oakland, past the cathedral and the museums closed for the night. Maple leaves swirled across the asphalt like sparks fading from a dying fire. Evan didn't know what storm he'd just driven into, but his instincts told him one thing: this wasn't over. The city lights of Pittsburgh blurred past in streaks of amber and white as Evan drove through the quiet streets toward Lawrenceville. His fingers gripped the steering wheel tighter than he realized, the leather creaking beneath his palms. The woman beside him, Lily Arden, sat rigid, her shoulders drawn up as if the seatbelt were another form of restraint. She hadn't spoken since the park. Only the occasional shudder of her breath broke the silence. Every few seconds she glanced into the side mirror, her wide brown eyes scanning the road behind them. Evan caught the movement. You're safe now, he said quietly, his voice rough from smoke and adrenaline. Lily didn't respond. She just kept watching the darkness outside, as if expecting it to reach in and pull her back. Evan's loft occupied the top floor of a converted warehouse near Butler Street. High ceilings, exposed brick, industrial beams. A space meant for solitude, not company. He guided her inside, the door locking automatically behind them with a click. She flinched at the sound. Hey, he said softly, palms raised. It's just the door. You're okay. Lily's breathing hitched. She took in the loft with quick, darting glances, the steel-framed windows overlooking the river, the tidy kitchen that looked barely used, the photographs on the wall. None of people, only landscapes and battlefields. She stood in the doorway like someone unsure if they were walking into safety or another trap. Sit, Evan offered, nodding toward the worn leather couch near the fireplace. I'll get you some water. Her legs trembled as she crossed the room. The oversized jacket he'd given her hung from her shoulders, almost swallowing her frame. Beneath it, her wedding dress, torn, scorched, and streaked with dirt, looked like a ghost of something beautiful. Evan poured water into a glass, his mind racing. He wasn't new to emergencies. He'd dragged men from ambushes, stitched wounds with trembling hands under fire. But this was different. He didn't know the battlefield. When he turned back, Lily was staring at the photographs on the wall. One in particular, a black and white shot of a desert convoy at sunset. You were there, she said quietly. Afghanistan, he answered, setting the glass beside her. long time ago. She studied him then, her gaze lingering on the faint scar along his jaw. You're military. Was, he corrected. Now I just build things instead of breaking them. Something flickered across her face, half a smile, half disbelief. You don't look like a builder. Evan smirked faintly. You don't look like someone who'd be chained to a car seat. The smile died. Her eyes fell to the floor, her fingers tightening around the glass. I'm sorry, he said quickly. It's fine, she interrupted, voice brittle. You don't have to understand. For a few moments. The only sound was the soft hum of the refrigerator and the distant horns from Liberty Avenue. Lily's hands trembled as she tried to drink. Her wrists were red and raw from the shackle. Faint bruises climbed up her forearm like vines. Evan fetched a small first aid kit from the cabinet and crouched beside her. Let me see that. She hesitated but didn't pull away as he cleaned the wounds. His touch was careful, practiced. What happened to you, Lily? Her gaze drifted toward the window. You wouldn't believe me. Try me. She swallowed hard, eyes glistening. They were supposed to kill me tonight. Before he could respond, the faint buzz of his phone cut through the air. The name flashing on the screen read Abigail Mercer. He answered. Abby? The voice on the other end was brisk, composed, and tinged with worry. Abigail Mercer had been the Brooks family's executive secretary for nearly 15 years. A woman in her late 40s with sharp instincts and a memory that rivaled any database. She was the kind of person who could arrange a merger and a funeral in the same afternoon without missing a detail. Evan, she said, her New England accent clipped. You need to tell me what's going on. What do you mean? There were men here. Not journalists, not clients, suits I don't recognize. They showed credentials that didn't belong to any agency I know. They wanted to know where you were tonight. Evan's pulse quickened. What did you tell them? The truth. That I haven't heard from you since morning. But they didn't like that answer. They started asking questions about your service record. I told them politely to leave before I called security. They're still parked outside the building. Outside Brooks Holdings? Yes. Evan's jaw tightened. He could picture Abby standing there, tall, thin, her salt and pepper hair twisted into its usual bun, framed by her habitual dark blue blazer. She had a calmness that made even his father defer to her in crises. Lock everything down, he said. No one gets into the offices without clearance. Evan, she said softly now, this isn't business-related, is it? He hesitated. No, and I think you should go home early tonight. That's what worries me, she murmured. Then the line went dead. Evan set the phone down slowly. Lily had been watching him the entire time. They're looking for you, she said. He turned to her. No, they're looking for you. She looked away, her fingers twisting in the hem of the jacket. You shouldn't have brought me here. Well, it's a little late for that. He crossed his arms. Who are you running from, Lily? Her silence stretched long enough that he thought she wouldn't answer. Then she whispered, You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Try me again. Her eyes met his, and for a fleeting moment, he saw something. Pain, yes, but also shame. They own everything, she said finally. The police, the hospitals, the papers. If they find me alive, they'll erase me properly next time. Evan exhaled, steady but heavy. Then we keep you invisible. She blinked. Why are you helping me? He thought of his father's words the day he left the Navy. "You can't save everyone, Evan. Pick the fights you can win." "Because maybe I finally found a fight worth losing," he said. As the night deepened, he found her a blanket and guided her to the spare bedroom. A minimalist space, all gray and steel, too sterile for comfort. Lily paused at the threshold. "Do you live alone?" she asked. "Yeah, easier that way." She nodded, as though that explained everything. "I used to think that too." She turned toward the bed, but stopped when she saw a framed photograph on the nightstand. A woman in a military uniform, standing beside Evan, both smiling under the desert sun. "Your wife?" she asked quietly. Evan hesitated, the air between them thickening. "My team leader," he said. "She didn't make it back." "I'm sorry." He gave a small, dismissive shrug, but his eyes told another story. "It was a long time ago." Lily lowered herself onto the bed, exhaustion finally breaking through fear. Evan lingered in the doorway for a moment before stepping out, closing the door halfway. He returned to the living room, poured a measure of bourbon, and stood by the window overlooking the river. The autumn wind carried the faint scent of smoke still clinging to his clothes. Down below, near the warehouse parking lot, a black SUV slowed as it passed. The driver didn't look up, but the engine idled longer than it should have before rolling on. Evan's phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. "You should have stayed out of this, sailor." He stared at the message until the words seemed to burn themselves into the screen. Then he glanced toward the closed bedroom door where Lily slept fitfully, her shadow flickering under the dim hallway light. He realized then what his gut had been trying to tell him since Shenley Park. This wasn't random, and it damn sure wasn't over. Morning came reluctantly to Pittsburgh. The light that crept through Evan's loft windows was pale and fragile, spilling across the steel beams and half-empty bourbon glass left on the counter. The rain from before dawn had stopped, but the air still smelled faintly of wet brick and smoke. Evan stood by the window, coffee in hand, eyes scanning the quiet street below. Every passing car made his muscles tense. He hadn't slept. Not really. Years in combat had trained his body to rest with one eye open, but last night had felt different. The danger wasn't abstract this time. It was breathing under his own roof. Behind him, the bedroom door creaked. Lily appeared in the doorway, barefoot, wearing one of his old gray shirts that hung loose on her frame. Her auburn hair was still damp from the shower, curling against her neck. The shadows under her eyes made her look younger, almost fragile, but her posture, straight and cautious, reminded him she'd been living in fear for longer than one night. "You should have slept longer," he said. "I did," she lied. "For maybe 10 minutes. Evan handed her a mug of coffee. "No hospitals, no police, but caffeine's allowed, right?" A faint smile ghosted across her lips. "You're funny for someone who doesn't smile." He leaned against the counter, studying her. "And you're calm for someone who nearly burned alive." Her fingers tightened around the mug. "I've had practice." The quiet hum of the refrigerator filled the silence between them. Then Evan's phone buzzed on the counter. He reached for it, expecting another text from his secretary, Abby. But the name flashing on the screen made his stomach drop. Grace Brooks, his sister. He swiped to answer. "Grace, it's early." Her voice cut in, tight and trembling. "Evan, what the hell is going on? Slow down. What happened?" "I just got a message." Paper rustled on her end. Someone slipped it under my apartment door during the night. No name, no sender. Just listen. She read it aloud, voice shaking. Bring her back to her father, or you'll lose what family you have left. Evan's grip on the phone tightened until his knuckles whitened. Did you see anyone? No, but my neighbor said there was a black SUV parked across the street around midnight. The same kind that used to pick Dad up when he visited investors. He closed his eyes, exhaling through his nose. Lock your doors. I'm sending a security team over. Evan, I mean it, Grace. Don't leave your apartment. When the call ended, he set the phone down slowly, jaw clenched. Lily had gone still, her face pale. It's about me, isn't it? Evan didn't answer immediately. His silence was enough. She set her mug down with trembling hands. Then it's time I tell you the truth. They sat across from each other at the kitchen table. Outside, church bells echoed, faintly from across the river, marking a Sunday morning that felt anything but peaceful. Lily took a deep breath, folding her hands tightly in her lap. My father's name is Victor Arden. The name hit the air like a gunshot. Even Evan, who rarely followed business news, recognized it. Arden Developments, one of the largest construction conglomerates in the Northeast. Private jets. Political donations. Half the skyline bore the man's name. He's powerful, Evan said quietly. He's dangerous, Lily corrected. And he doesn't forgive disobedience. She looked down as if ashamed. He built his empire by buying people. Judges, contractors, reporters, you name it. When someone says no, he ruins them. When someone threatens him, they disappear. Evan watched her carefully. And you ran from him. Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. I tried. She rose, pacing slowly, bare feet silent against the polished wood floor. 2 years ago, he arranged a marriage for me, to Graham Whitlow, the son of one of his investors. On paper, it was business. In reality, her voice cracked. Graham isn't a man. He's a monster in a tailored suit. Evan's eyes darkened. He's the one who chained you in that car. Lily nodded once. He called it discipline. Said I needed to learn obedience before the wedding. My father didn't stop him. He encouraged it. For a long moment, the only sound was the rain beginning again against the glass. Evan wanted to ask more, but something in her eyes warned him not to push. Instead, he said quietly, You said you've had practice surviving. I started collecting proof, she said, almost whispering. Documents, recordings, transfers between shell companies. Enough to bury my father and his partners if it ever saw daylight. I thought I could take it to the authorities. Let me guess, Evan said, his voice grim. The authorities were already bought. Exactly. So where is this proof now? Lily hesitated. Then she met his gaze, defiant for the first time since he'd found her. Locked in a safety deposit box in Philadelphia, under another name. Mine's been dead for 2 years. Evan studied her. Beneath the soot and bruises, he saw the steel that had kept her alive, something that reminded him of soldiers he'd known, people who'd stared down the impossible and refused to break. You're not what I expected, he admitted. She tilted her head. And what did you expect? He gave a small, humorless smile. A victim. Lily's eyes flashed. I was. For a while. But victims die. Survivors adapt. A sudden knock echoed at the door. Sharp. 3 times. Evan's hand went instinctively to the small pistol he kept under the counter. He motioned for Lily to stay back. He opened the door just a few inches, ready for anything. A woman stood in the hallway, holding a brown paper bag and a steaming cup tray. Late 20s, mixed heritage, freckles scattered across sun-tanned skin. She wore a leather jacket over a floral dress and had the confident slouch of someone used to city streets. "Relax, hero," she said, raising an eyebrow. "It's just breakfast." Evan blinked. "Nina?" Nina Alvarez, his downstairs neighbor. She was a local artist who painted murals on underpasses and ran a small rescue for stray cats. Sharp-tongued, kind-hearted, and stubborn enough to argue with traffic cops until they apologized. "I saw the fire trucks near Shenley last night," she said, stepping closer. "Heard you got home late. You okay?" "Yeah," Evan said quickly. "Just smoke from the park." Nina handed him the coffee tray. "You look like hell, Brooks. Try sleeping once in a while." She glanced past him and caught sight of Lily standing near the table, half hidden behind his jacket. Her expression softened, but curiosity gleamed in her eyes. "Didn't know you had company." "Friend of the family," Evan said quickly. Nina smiled politely, but didn't pry. "Well, tell your friend she's safe here. Building's full of artists and veterans, people who mind their own business." "Thanks, Nina." When she left, the hallway light flickered out behind her, leaving the loft in half shadow again. Lily sank into the couch, whispering, "Even your neighbors sound kinder than anyone I've known." Evan poured her another cup of coffee. "You'd be surprised. Nina once punched a developer at a zoning hearing." Lily's lips curved faintly. "Maybe I'd like her." He smiled, just barely, but the humor faded as he checked his phone. Another message had arrived, from an unknown number. "We warned you once. She goes back tonight." Below it, a photo. Grace leaving her apartment, unaware of the camera trained on her from across the street. Evan's blood went cold. He showed it to Lily. Her hand flew to her mouth. "They know where she lives." He nodded grimly. "Then it's official. This isn't just about saving you anymore." She looked up at him, eyes shining with guilt. "I'm sorry, Evan." "Don't be," he said. "If your father thinks he can threaten my family, he just declared war." Outside, thunder rolled over the river, echoing through the old warehouse walls. Inside, Evan Brooks, former SEAL, heir to an empire, made the silent decision he'd been avoiding since Shenley Park. He wasn't just protecting Lily anymore. He was taking the fight to whoever thought they could burn her alive and walk away. And in that moment, the quiet soldier finally chose a battlefield again. As the storm thickened outside, the screen dimmed to black. And if you've come this far into their story, you might want to stay close, because the truth about Victor Arden is only beginning to surface. Follow the channel so you don't miss what happens next. The rain had settled into a steady drizzle by the time Evan pulled his truck into the underground parking lot of the Pittsburgh Police Bureau. The concrete walls glistened with moisture, the dim fluorescent lights reflecting in shallow puddles. Lily sat beside him, wrapped in his gray jacket, staring down at her hands. Her wrists were still raw from the chains, the marks fading, but not forgotten. "You don't have to do this," Evan said quietly. Lily turned her head toward him, her hair falling like damp silk over one eye. "If I don't, my father wins again." There was no fear in her voice this time, only exhaustion sharpened into resolve. Evan nodded once and shut off the engine. "Then let's meet the detective." Detective Hannah Cole looked up from her desk when they entered the precinct. She was in her early 40s, lean and wiry, her short blonde hair tucked behind one ear. Her navy suit fit like armor, and her eyes, gray and cool as Lake Erie in winter, missed nothing. Cole had built a reputation in the Pittsburgh department for solving cases others abandoned. Some said she was brilliant. Others whispered she was ruthless. Both were true. She rose when Evan approached. "Mr. Brooks," she said, her handshake firm. "Your secretary called ahead. Said you had something urgent." "This is Lily Arden," Evan said. Cole's gaze flicked toward Lily, assessing. "The missing daughter of Victor Arden? You realize that family could buy this precinct twice over." "She's not missing," Evan said. "She's hunted." Cole motioned for them to sit. "Let's start from the beginning." For nearly an hour, Lily spoke. Softly, steadily, sometimes stopping when her breath caught. She described the forced engagement, the threats, the surveillance, and the night she was chained in the burning car. Cole listened without interrupting, pen moving quickly across her notepad. When Lily finished, the detective leaned back, expression unreadable. "You have evidence of your father's crimes?" "Yes," Lily said. "Transfers, shell accounts, names, everything. But it's locked away in a deposit box in Philadelphia." Cole exhaled slowly. "You understand what you're accusing him of? Money laundering, conspiracy, possibly murder. These aren't charges that stick easily to a man like Victor Arden." Evan's patience thinned. "You don't believe her?" "I want to believe her," Cole said evenly. "But I've seen whistleblowers disappear after crossing men with half your father's reach, Ms. Arden." She closed the notebook. "If what you're saying is true, we'll need help beyond this department." She picked up the phone on her desk. "There's someone at the bureau who owes me a favor." 2 hours later, the heavy door of Cole's office opened, and Special Agent Lauren Pierce of the FBI stepped in. Pierce was in her mid-30s, tall and athletic, her posture unyielding. She wore a charcoal suit and carried herself with the brisk confidence of someone who lived on black coffee and classified files. Her dark hair was pulled into a tight bun, and the faint scar near her left eyebrow hinted at a past field operation gone wrong. "Detective Cole," Pierce greeted, her tone professional. "I hear you've stumbled onto something interesting." Cole gestured toward Lily. "Meet the source." Pierce's sharp blue eyes studied Lily for a long moment. "You're Victor Arden's daughter." "Yes." "And you're accusing your father of organized financial crimes and attempted murder." "Yes," Lily said again, her voice steady. Pierce sat down, crossing one leg over the other. "All right, let's test your story." For the next 20 minutes, the agent asked questions. Dates, names, account numbers, company subsidiaries. Every time Lily hesitated, Evan tensed beside her. But each time she recovered, her memory sharp, her details precise. Finally, Pierce set her pen down. "You're either telling the truth, or you've memorized an entire corporate ledger for fun." "I'm telling the truth," Lily said quietly. Pierce exchanged a look with Cole, then leaned forward. "We can't arrest Victor Arden yet. Not without something recent. Something that ties him directly to a criminal act." "I can get that," Lily said. Pierce arched an eyebrow. "How?" "By meeting him," Lily said. "He wants me back. If I agree to see him, he'll come himself." Evan frowned. "Absolutely not." Lily turned to him. "It's the only way. He'll never confess to anyone else. Pierce's expression hardened. If she's willing, we can wire her. Record everything. Cole nodded slowly. It's risky, but it might work. Evan's jaw tightened. She's not bait. Pierce looked him straight in the eye. No, Mr. Brooks. She's the evidence. The plan took shape over the next few hours. Cole arranged a neutral location, Mellon Park's walled garden, an enclosed courtyard known for its privacy. Pierce would coordinate surveillance from a van 2 blocks away, monitoring the feed from the wire Lily would wear. Evan stayed silent for most of it, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the rain streaking down the office window. When Lily finally stepped outside with Pierce to sign consent forms, Cole turned to him. You care about her, she said simply. He didn't deny it. She's been through hell. Cole gave a small nod. And if she's telling the truth, this could tear down half the city's power structure. Evan glanced at the door where Lily had disappeared. Then let's make sure she lives to see it. That afternoon, they met someone new in a quiet cafe in Shadyside. Someone Detective Cole had suggested could help control the narrative if things went wrong. Ava Delgado arrived late, shaking off her umbrella. She was 32, Latina, with dark curls that framed a face equal parts beauty and intensity. Her olive skin glowed faintly under the yellow cafe lights. But her eyes, deep brown, sharp with purpose, belonged to a woman who'd seen too much. She worked as an investigative journalist for the Pittsburgh Ledger, a local paper known for digging into corruption despite its small staff and smaller budget. She'd once been nominated for a national award after uncovering a charity scandal tied to a congressman. Cole made introductions. Ms. Delgado, the detective said, this is Lily Arden and Evan Brooks. We're asking for discretion. Ava nodded, sliding into the booth. You want off-the-record protection? Or a story that detonates the second someone silences her? The latter, Cole said. Ava's gaze shifted to Lily. You're the Arden girl. Yes, Lily said softly. I heard about you. You exposed the Whitlow Foundation. Ava's jaw tightened at the name. Yeah, the same Whitlow who was supposed to marry you. My sister, Sophia, was engaged to his cousin. She went missing 3 years ago. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Evan leaned forward. You think Whitlow's involved? I don't think, Ava said. I know, but proving it, she exhaled. That's been impossible. Until now. She opened her laptop and began typing rapidly. If you're wearing a wire tomorrow, I'll set up a contingency. A dead man's switch. If anything happens to Lily, anything at all, a full dossier goes public. Every outlet, every law firm, every federal contact I've ever worked with. Lily looked stunned. Why would you help me? Ava met her gaze. Because monsters like your father don't stop unless someone shines a floodlight on them. And I lost someone who thought she could outrun the dark. By nightfall, the rain had stopped. The city lights shimmered off wet pavement as Evan and Lily returned to the loft. The plan for tomorrow hung between them, heavy and electric. Lily stood by the window, watching the reflections dance across the Allegheny River. Do you think it'll work? She asked. Evan moved beside her, his reflection tall and silent in the glass. It has to. She turned to him, her eyes soft but determined. You don't have to come tomorrow. He gave a short, humorless laugh. After everything, you really think I'd let you walk into that meeting alone? Outside, the city hummed, unaware that in less than 24 hours, Its most powerful man might finally face the light he'd spent a lifetime avoiding. And somewhere across town, Victor Arden was already on the move. As the screen fades to black, remember, sometimes justice needs more than truth. It needs witnesses brave enough to tell it. Follow the channel so you'll be here when the truth finally breaks. The next day dawned cold and brittle, the kind of Pittsburgh morning that turned every breath into smoke. The Mellon Park walled garden lay shrouded in mist, its iron gates slick with dew. The air smelled faintly of wet stone and dying leaves. Evan stood just inside the park's entrance, scanning the symmetrical rows of hedges and stone benches. He'd walked this place before, once as a boy with his father, when the world still seemed safe. Now every shadow looked like an ambush. From the far side of the courtyard, Agent Lauren Pierce adjusted the tiny earpiece she wore. She was dressed down for the operation. Dark jeans, leather jacket, hair pulled back. Even out of uniform, she carried that same clipped authority, the kind that made subordinates sit straighter without realizing why. Beside her, Detective Hannah Cole monitored a tablet screen, live streaming Lily's audio feed from the hidden microphone sewn into her coat collar. Pierce's team, a half-dozen FBI agents in plain clothes, were stationed along the perimeter, posing as joggers, dog walkers, and a couple sipping coffee under the stone archway. Their faces calm, their eyes never still. Evan hated not being closer. Pierce caught his look. "She'll be fine. You trained for danger. She's training for courage." Evan didn't answer. His fingers flexed restlessly against the small transmitter in his pocket. If anything went wrong, he'd hear it before anyone else. At 11 o'clock a.m. sharp, a line of black sedans rolled up to the curb outside the park. The engines idled, throaty and expensive. The doors opened in synchronized precision, like soldiers stepping into formation. Victor Arden emerged first. He was taller than Lily by a head, his silver hair combed immaculately, his navy overcoat tailored to perfection. Every movement radiated control, from the way he buttoned his gloves to the measured steps that carried him toward the garden. His face was lined but unyielding, eyes the same shade as his daughter's, though colder, sharper. Two men followed close behind. Graham Whitlow, the fiancé turned jailer, and another figure Evan didn't recognize. Broad, bald, with a boxer's nose and an earpiece barely hidden by the collar of his suit. Whitlow looked exactly as Lily had described him. Tall, handsome in that polished, empty way. His blonde hair slicked back, his mouth curved in a perpetual smirk. His eyes, blue and gleaming, carried the gleam of someone who believed the law didn't apply to him. Victor paused at the gate, surveying the space like a king inspecting conquered territory. "You always did like this park," he said, when Lily appeared from behind the hedge. His voice was smooth, almost gentle. "It's poetic, I suppose, that you'd choose it for your confession." Lily stood still, her coat drawn tight against the chill. Beneath it, the wire pressed against her skin. Her heart pounded so hard she was sure the microphone would pick it up. "I'm not here to confess, Father," she said softly. "I'm here to listen." Victor smiled faintly. "You've caused me quite a lot of trouble, you know. The press has been sniffing around, investors asking questions. You disappoint me." "I learned from the best," she replied. Whitlow laughed under his breath. "Still got that mouth on you." Evan heard that through the earpiece and felt his fists clench. Cole's voice came quietly over the channel. "Stay put, Brooks. We need the admission first." Lily's eyes flicked from her father to the men behind him. Is this what you wanted, Father? A daughter chained in a burning car? Victor's expression didn't change. You embarrassed this family. You were meant to uphold a legacy. Instead, you ran to strangers. That legacy, she said, voice steady, was built on stolen money and blood. A muscle twitched in his jaw. Watch your tone. Why? There's no one left to lie to. Whitlow stepped forward, sneering. You think you can ruin us with your childish rebellion? Every penny that touched your hands came from your father's work. The projects, the contracts, the shell companies in the Caymans, Lily interrupted. The bribes routed through Whitlow Holdings, the judges on payroll. Victor's eyes narrowed. You think you understand the world, Isabella? The name, her real name, slipped from his mouth like poison. You think power survives by playing fair? We build cities while men like your friend Brooks build fences around their conscience. Then tell me, Lily said, stepping closer. Was it worth it? The money? The partnerships? Selling me off to a man who chained me to a seat like a dog? For the first time, the mask cracked. Victor's voice rose, anger bleeding through the refinement. You were never meant to feel. You were meant to obey. That's how we survive in this family. Whitlow touched his arm, murmuring, Sir, calm down. Don't tell me to calm down, Victor snapped. This ungrateful child destroyed years of work. The Whitlow contracts kept my cash flow clean, kept the investigators off my back, and she threw it all away because she thought she was in love with freedom. Cole's voice came through the comms, low and firm. We've got him. Keep recording. Lily took a slow breath, eyes bright with restrained tears. You just confessed to everything, Father. Victor froze. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed down the stone path. A group of joggers slowed, removing their earbuds. One of them reached into his jacket and pulled a badge. FBI! Chaos erupted. Agents swarmed through the garden gates, shouting commands. Victor's men reached for concealed weapons, but within seconds they were surrounded, outnumbered, disarmed. Evan broke cover, sprinting down the path as Lily stumbled backward, shaken but unhurt. He caught her just as the nearest agent cuffed Victor Arden, reading him his rights. Pierce appeared beside them, her expression tight but satisfied. It's over, she said. For the first time in 2 years, Lily exhaled without fear, but it wasn't over. Not yet. An hour later, the victory began to unravel. Inside the federal field office, tension crackled like static. Agent Pierce paced near her desk, phone pressed to her ear. Cole watched a monitor replaying the arrest footage while Evan stood guard near the window. Then Pierce's phone rang again, an internal line. She answered, listened, and her expression hardened. What do you mean the order's been reversed? Everyone froze. Pierce slammed the receiver down. Judge Fenton just signed a release. Victor Arden is being transferred to private custody pending review. Cole swore under her breath. Fenton's one of Arden's donors. God damn it. Evan's pulse spiked. You can't be serious. You heard his confession. Doesn't matter, Pierce said bitterly. Paperwork trumps evidence until the press gets involved. That was when her email notification pinged. A new message from Ava Delgado. Subject line, tick, tock. Pierce opened the link, and within seconds, the room filled with the glow of breaking news. On the front page of the Pittsburgh Ledger, Arden Empire built on lies, financial network exposed. Beneath the headline were screenshots of offshore accounts, property records, and photos of Victor meeting with government officials, every piece of data Lily had gathered. Ava's voice came through on speakerphone, calm but urgent. The dead man's switch worked. The file went live exactly on time. The Department of Justice just called the Bureau. They're opening a federal inquiry. That release order's about to go up in smoke. Pierce smiled grimly. Remind me never to underestimate a journalist with a grudge. By evening, the reversal came through. The arrest was reinstated under federal authority. Victor Arden was led out of his penthouse in handcuffs, cameras flashing, his empire collapsing live on every major network. Graham Whitlow was next, cornered leaving his company's downtown office, his perfect hair disheveled, his arrogance gone. The other men who had followed Victor, accountants, lawyers, security heads, were already being questioned. As the last light of day faded over the city, Evan and Lily stood together outside the Bureau's glass doors. The cold wind whipped across the plaza, carrying the distant sounds of reporters shouting questions. Lily watched the skyline, the buildings her father had built gleaming under the sunset. He used to say he'd carve his name into this city forever, she murmured. Evan slipped his hand into hers. He was right. But now it's a name people will remember for the right reasons. She smiled faintly, tears blurring her eyes. We did it. Evan squeezed her hand. You did it. From across the street, a camera flash went off. Ava Delgado, standing under a street lamp, lowering her camera with a knowing grin. She mouthed, "For Sophia." Lily nodded back, the unspoken bond between survivors passing silently through the night air. And somewhere behind them, sirens wailed, not as a warning, but as a requiem for the empire that had fallen. If you've followed this far, don't stop now, because in the next chapter, justice learns that victory always has a price. Subscribe so you'll see what comes after the fall. For the first time in months, Pittsburgh saw sunlight. The storm had passed, leaving the air crisp and new, but not everything washed clean with the rain. The headlines still burned with the fallout of Victor Arden's arrest, his empire crumbling, his lawyers scrambling, and his enemies sharpening their knives. Yet even as justice gained ground, Evan Brooks was beginning to learn that victories like this came with a price. It started with the phone calls. "Mr. Brooks," said the voice of a corporate partner, smooth and apologetic, "I'm afraid our board has decided to delay the Harborfront project indefinitely. You understand, it's not about you, it's about optics." Then another. "I'm sorry, Evan. Investors are nervous. Arden Developments had ties everywhere. We can't risk being dragged into their mess." Within a week, Brooks Holdings, once the city's most reliable construction firm, had lost 3 major contracts. Evan's name, once synonymous with discipline and success, was suddenly too close to controversy. He sat in his office, staring at the skyline through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Pittsburgh looked the same as ever. Bridges gleaming gold, the rivers cutting through steel and glass. But to him, the city felt different now. Heavy, watching. Grace Brooks, his younger sister, stepped inside carrying 2 coffees. She was 32, auburn-haired like their mother, and had inherited the calm logic Evan often lacked. Grace was petite but carried herself with quiet confidence, her sharp gray eyes softened only by concern. "You've been sitting here for hours," she said, setting 1 cup on his desk. "Drink it before it turns to sludge." He took the cup but didn't sip. "How's the security at your apartment?" "Good," she said. "FBI checked the building twice. I'm fine, Evan. You don't have to keep asking." He leaned back in his chair, exhaustion lining his face. If anything happened to you because of this, nothing will, she cut in. Lily's testimony put Arden away, and the DOJ has her under protection for every hearing. You did what you had to. Yeah, he muttered, rubbing his jaw. And now half the city thinks I burned my own business to make a political statement. Grace gave a small, almost mischievous smile. Then maybe it's time to build something different. That thought stayed with him long after she left. By the weekend, he found himself standing in a forgotten lot on the outskirts of Lawrenceville. Half an acre of cracked asphalt and wild grass overlooking the Allegheny River. It wasn't much, but Evan saw potential in the silence. Lily stood beside him, her coat buttoned to her chin against the chilly wind. Her hair had grown longer since the trial began, the auburn strands catching the sun. She looked healthier now, though her eyes still carried that deep, wary wisdom of someone who'd seen what most couldn't imagine. "This is where you want to start over?" she asked, scanning the empty ground. Evan nodded. This city doesn't need another luxury condo. It needs homes for people who came back from war and didn't know where to go, and women who escaped men like your father and have nowhere safe to run. She looked at him, the wind tugging her hair. "You're serious." He smiled faintly. "Dead serious." Lily knelt, scooping up a handful of soil. "It's solid. Good foundation potential." "I was hoping you'd say that," he said, "because I want you to help design it." She blinked, surprised. "Me?" "You've got an eye for spaces that heal. I've seen the sketches you made for the Women's Shelter Project you showed Agent Pierce. The way you use light, color, hell, even the name you picked, the Lantern House." Lily smiled softly. "It's not just a name. My mother used to say a lantern isn't meant to hide light. It's meant to share it." "Then that's what we'll build," Evan said. "A place where the light doesn't die." Over the next few weeks, the lot came alive with blueprints and purpose. Lily spent her mornings in the Brooks Holdings design room, sketching layouts and interior flows on large drafting paper. Her hand was steady, her ideas efficient but filled with warmth. Communal kitchens, open courtyards, rooms painted in calming earth tones. She wanted every hallway to feel like safety, every door to feel like freedom. Sometimes Evan joined her, sleeves rolled up, reviewing cost estimates and material samples. His practical mind balanced her artistry. Together, they built something real out of what both had lost. During lunch breaks, Grace would visit with sandwiches, teasing them for turning the office into a war room. She'd started handling public relations for the new venture, spinning the company's narrative from scandal to salvation. Her favorite line in interviews became, "We build what matters now." But the world outside wasn't as eager to forgive. One afternoon, Evan received an unexpected visitor. A man in his 50s stood in the lobby, tall and broad-shouldered, with salt and pepper hair and a face marked by years of field work. His name tag read Mark Ridley, U.S. Department of Justice. When Evan ushered him inside, the man's handshake was firm, his tone direct. "Mr. Brooks, I'm part of the special grand jury assigned to the Arden case. Ms. Arden mentioned you were her point of contact." Evan nodded. "She's at the federal office right now, giving her final statement." Ridley nodded, removing his hat. "Good. She's a brave woman. Not many could stand up to a father like that and still look him in the eye." "She's stronger than she knows," Evan said. Ridley gave a small smile. "You both are. I came to tell you personally. The grand jury has accepted the remaining evidence. Full indictment confirmed. Victor Arden's not getting out of this one." Evan let out a long breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. That's good news. Ridley's eyes softened. I've seen a lot of corruption cases. They usually end with everyone walking free. Not this time. What you did, protecting her, standing by her, you changed the ending. Evan shook his head. She changed it. I just held the line. The agent smiled faintly, tipping his hat before leaving. Sometimes, holding the line is enough. That evening, Evan drove to the federal courthouse downtown. Through the tall glass windows, he saw Lily standing beside Agent Lauren Pierce, both reviewing a folder of signed documents. Pierce, still crisp and commanding as ever, looked pleased. Your testimony closed the final loop, she told Lily. The grand jury's verdict goes public tomorrow. Lily smiled, though exhaustion shadowed her features. When it's done, maybe I'll finally sleep. You will, Pierce said, then turned to Evan. And Brooks, good work on that housing project. I hear the DOJ might even help fund it under the reintegration grant for veterans. Keep doing what you're doing. He nodded, grateful. Pierce left, her stride purposeful as ever. Lily turned to him, her voice soft. They said it's over. Really over this time. Evan reached for her hand. Then let's start again. Weeks later, the foundation for the Lantern House broke ground. The ceremony was small, just volunteers, a few veterans, and local reporters. Ava Delgado stood in the crowd, her camera slung over her shoulder, documenting the day. When asked why she continued covering the story, she only said, because rebuilding is part of justice too. As the first shovel of earth was lifted, sunlight broke through the clouds, washing the site in gold. Lily stood beside Evan, a hard hat balanced over her hair, smiling for the first time in what felt like years. This, she said, is the life my mother would have wanted for me. Evan looked out over the site, the future community center, the shelter, the homes that would soon rise from nothing. And the life you fought for, he said. You earned this. The wind carried the sound of hammers from a nearby construction crew, steady, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. Lily looked up at him. So did you. As the afternoon faded, the golden light settled on the sign at the edge of the lot. The Lantern House, a project by Brooks Holdings and Lily Arden Design. And for the first time in a long time, both of them believed that light, once lit, might actually stay. Because rebuilding isn't just about bricks and steel. It's about courage, forgiveness, and the kind of love that grows quietly, like dawn after a storm. 14 months later, autumn came again to Pittsburgh. The city glowed in amber and gold as the leaves turned, dusting the streets with warmth before the chill of winter could take hold. From the steps of St. Paul's Cathedral, the bells rang clear across the skyline, each note carrying the quiet triumph of something reborn. Inside the grand, historic church, sunlight poured through stained glass windows, scattering rainbows across the marble floor. The air smelled faintly of cedar and candle wax. Rows of familiar faces filled the pews, friends, survivors, believers in second chances. And at the end of the aisle stood Evan Brooks, straight-backed and solemn, wearing a charcoal gray suit that fit him with military precision. His hair had grown slightly longer, now dusted with hints of silver at the temples. The faint scar along his jaw caught the light as he smiled, softly, without the guardedness that once defined him. He turned as the doors opened. There she was. Lily Arden, no longer the frightened woman from the flames, but the architect of her own future. Her white dress was simple, elegant, its lace sleeves brushing against her skin like memory made visible. Her auburn hair fell loose over her shoulders, crowned only with a sprig of autumn ivy. She carried no bouquet, just a single lantern, its warm light flickering through glass etched with the words, "The Lantern House, 2025." The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. As Lily walked down the aisle, those who had once stood in the shadows of her story rose to honor her journey. Agent Lauren Pierce sat in the second pew, her sharp features softened for once. She wore a dark green dress instead of her usual suit, though her posture remained straight, unyielding, a soldier of law even in celebration. She caught Lily's gaze and nodded, a silent salute of respect from one woman who'd fought her war in courtrooms instead of deserts. Beside her sat Detective Hannah Cole, in a navy coat and a rare smile. The lines around her eyes seemed gentler now. She had transferred out of homicide to lead a new task force for victims of organized crime, a promise she'd made after the Arden case. "Justice needs architects, too," she'd once told Lily. In the same row, Ava Delgado adjusted her camera, the faint click echoing between verses of the organ. She wore her trademark leather jacket over a burgundy dress, her curls untamed and radiant beneath the cathedral light. On her wrist was a silver bracelet engraved with her sister's name, Sophia. Ava had turned her pain into purpose, her investigative work now funding scholarships for missing persons advocacy. When her lens found Lily's face, she whispered, "For both of us." And behind them, scattered across the pews, were the women from the Lantern House. Some still bore scars, visible or not, but each wore color today. Bright scarves, patterned dresses, laughter that didn't hide anymore. They were living proof of what Lily had built, brick by brick, heart by heart. The ceremony began. The priest, Father Samuel Whitaker, was a kind-eyed man in his 60s, with silver hair and a voice that carried both wisdom and gentleness. Once a military chaplain, his sermons were known for their raw humanity. His calm presence steadied the room. "Marriage," he said, his gaze sweeping the gathered crowd, "is not the joining of perfection. It is the meeting of courage, the decision to rebuild when the world burns down around you." Lily reached the altar. Evan stepped forward to meet her, his expression tender, reverent. He took the lantern from her hands, setting it between them. The flame inside flickered in rhythm with the organ's low hum. "You carried this light," he whispered, his voice barely audible to anyone else. "Through everything." Lily smiled. "It carried me." Father Whitaker gestured for them to join hands. "Do you have your vows?" Evan nodded. His voice was steady but full of emotion that cracked the edges of his composure. "Lily," he began, "the first time I saw you, I thought I was saving a life. What I didn't know was that you'd save mine. You taught me that the world doesn't end when it burns. It rebuilds stronger. You are the foundation beneath everything I believe in. And I promise, whatever we build from here on out, you'll never stand alone." A quiet murmur moved through the church, the kind that follows words too true to ignore. Then Lily spoke. Her voice trembled at first, but grew stronger with each word. "Evan, you found me when I thought I was already gone. You didn't just fight for me. You stood beside me, even when the fire spread to your own world. You taught me that love isn't rescue, it's rebuilding. And I promise to keep rebuilding with you every day until the light runs out." Grace Brooks, standing as maid of honor, dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, whispering to Pierce, "I told him she'd make him cry." The priest smiled knowingly. "Then by the power vested in me by the Church and the state of Pennsylvania, I now pronounce you husband and wife." Applause broke out. The bell tower rang again, echoing through the vaulted ceiling as Evan leaned forward, kissed Lily softly, and for the first time in years, the city felt like it exhaled. The reception took place in the garden courtyard behind the cathedral, a place that once might have held ghosts, now filled with laughter, string lights, and music. Evan's construction team had repurposed the courtyard themselves. The tables were made from reclaimed wood, the lanterns hand-painted by residents of the Lantern House. Each one bore a name, women and veterans who had passed through the shelter and rebuilt their lives. Lily walked among them, her dress brushing the grass, her smile bright but humble. When she stopped at a table where a young mother sat with her 2 children, she knelt to speak with them. The mother, Maria Torres, a soft-spoken woman with dark curls and warm brown eyes, had once been one of the first residents of the shelter. Now she worked there as a counselor. "Thank you," Maria said, clasping Lily's hands. "You gave us a home. Not just a roof, a place to heal." Lily shook her head gently. "You gave it life." Nearby, Evan stood with Grace and Ava, his arm around his sister's shoulder as he surveyed the crowd. "You think Dad would have believed this?" Grace teased. Evan chuckled. "He would have asked why I didn't charge admission." Ava smirked. "You're already rich in headlines, Brooks. I'm publishing a follow-up, From Steel to Sanctuary, How a Family Changed Pittsburgh's Heart." Evan groaned. "At least give me a flattering photo this time." "Can't promise that," Ava replied. As laughter rippled between them, the music shifted to a slow melody. Evan turned to Lily, who was now standing under the string lights, her lantern glowing softly beside her. He extended his hand. "Dance with me?" She nodded. They moved slowly, the world fading into the warmth of autumn around them. The night air was cool, fragrant with cider and wood smoke. Every step felt like a heartbeat. For a moment, Evan looked up toward the sky, the stars faint against the city's glow. "You ever think," he said quietly, "that maybe we had to walk through the fire to find this?" Lily rested her head against his shoulder. "No," she whispered. "I think we had to build it." Hours later, when the guests had gone and the lanterns flickered low, Evan and Lily stood at the edge of the garden. The last light glowed in the lantern between them. Lily reached out and lifted it, holding it toward the dark river below. For every woman who thought she'd never escape. For every soldier who forgot what home felt like. Evan nodded. For every beginning built from ashes. She smiled through tears. For us. They released the lantern together. It drifted upward, catching the night wind, its flames steady even as it rose higher, past the steeple, past the stars, until it was only a golden point in the sky. Because sometimes love isn't born in safety. It's built, patiently, out of the wreckage. And if you've walked this far with them, you already know. The light was never about surviving the fire. It was about becoming it.